Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Riff Worship, a podcast where three grown men discover each other physically. No, that's the Patreon show.
Yes.
This is the one that's about music, right? This is the riff one.
Yeah, you ain't getting the good stuff for free.
I'm Justin Swindle, joined by my best friends, Austin Paulson and Dylan Adams, my friends in music and heavy metal. How are you all?
All right. Dylan? Bald?
Well, I'm rolling on one wheel over here, but I'm doing pretty good.
Let's see that gam.
That what?
Gam. Gam.
Is it a gam?
It's a gam. I always just called it a brace, man.
He meant the leg. The leg is the game.
The leg, not the leg.
Oh, let me see those dams. I can't even lift it up at this point.
Damn.
There
There he is.
Hey.
So
That creaky hinge.
Those reviews get more intense each week.
So we'll cut this out, but for the review, I'm recording tomorrow. I've already got a bit I'm doing about having a busted leg at the beginning of it just to feed into it. And I've been making myself cackle for 2 days about it.
Oh my
Which
God.
means I'm the only one that's going to find it funny.
It's going to be even better when I'm like editing through it and you're just laughing to yourself alone in a room.
And Austin's just annoyed.
I'm just like, come on, man. Let's get through
this
this.
fucking interview.
But
it's good to see
aside
y'all.
from the bum wheel, Dill's doing all right. We're getting ready to go through the glue races.
Yeah, that's true. Fuck.
We're editing
y'all.
that.
Fuck
We're
y'all.
editing
Yeah.
that out.
Clip that shit out. I'm still on the payroll.
I'm saying it.
Right. I'll get that phone call from fucking. But hey, bud.
Oh yeah, I'm
Oh,
sure
you
they
like-
check out fucking Riff Worship every episode.
You like riffs, do you?
Well, that's enough talking to each other and being friendly. Today, we're going to discuss the album 2 by the band Cursed.
Hell yeah.
Hardcore band. The album was released in 2005, right?
2005.
What, Dylan?
Hardcore band.
Yes. Yeah.
Really?
There's some hardcore
Yeah.
parts on here. What are you talking about?
Can't wait to dig into this.
Yeah, I've been really excited to talk about this record. I don't know if this band has ever put out a bad record.
No?
Yeah.
Did I show you Cursed at a party?
Yeah, it was my birthday. No, I don't know. But you definitely did show me this record for sure, 100%.
Yeah. I'm sure I just like put it on while I was driving you to work one day or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And it scarred me forever. It ruined me.
Wyatt showed me Cursed, actually.
Yeah.
This record in particular. But I also, for many years, for whatever reason, would get this band basically because of some of the imagery on like album covers confused with Modern Life is War. And they're obviously two vastly different sounding bands, right? But like some of the artwork is very reminiscent, like black and white and this thing. But I've seen this album cover so many times throughout the years, be it at shows, be it on, collages of different album covers. But it's always tied in. And I've also seen this image used in, horror movies and all sorts of stuff throughout the years. So yeah, it's a very striking album cover.
I feel like every time I see it, you gotta like you're just in the midst of somebody who is in the know. Like I think I was at a mall once and saw this like on a back patch on someone. I was like, what the hell? Like at an FYE, I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? That's awesome.
Those FYE kids, they
love Canadian hardcore.
I bought so much underground shit at the FYE at the Bowling Green Mall. Like when I first moved to town, like there was so much shit that I could find there, like used stuff for like $6 or something. And it was bonkers what you could actually find there. Like I bought an Exhumed record there one time, like a really early one.
They had it with a deal with a Naruto plushie or something like that. And
that came later.
Dylan was just like, yes, sir, Mr. FYE.
That came very much later. But yeah, you could walk into FYE and just find really rad shit, and people would like flip their CD catalogs and just go in there and you could find just great shit for $3-4 at a pop.
What kind of pop?
Red pop is my favorite, Fago. Mountain Mist is pretty good. They've got a cotton candy one that's pretty okay. I will keep going with if you guys don't stop.
That was our FYE ad. That was our FYE ad read, by the way.
Sponsors,
that
please.
Was
I know you guys yeah.
Our first ad read for the show.
Right. Definitely got paid. If we just keep going, they'll keep paying us for sure. Or what if we did that and I just sent them a bill? Like, hey, we've been talking about it for at least 30 minutes of this episode, so
they would have to close one at least one FYE. They're like, we don't have this on the payroll. Quick, shut down the mall.
all we have left are these Japanese candies that have been sitting next to our register for the last 6.5 years.
Oh God.
Do you ever have the candy at the FYE?
I've bought one or two things here or there, but I was already in the loop on that shit because of that Hastings music store I used to go to. Sold things very similar in a smaller quantity. So I had the Pockies or whatever they were throughout the years.
So Cursed, huh? That's a band.
Yeah.
It was a band.
And they were. Cursed.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
You got a way of picking them, Swindle.
At least they were still together when this album came out, unlike Coalesce.
This is true. Although
they got back together.
I mean, some of the members of Cursed that recorded this album were not in the band when it came out, technically. So that is kind of funny in a way. Like, but we'll get into that. Yeah, Canadian hardcore band formed in 2001, the winter of 2001, I think I read. Formed of like a combination of like veterans of the Southern Ontario hardcore scene. Bands like Left for Dead had 3 members of Cursed in it. The Swarm, aka Knee Deep in the Head, which I love that name. It's so funny. It's just like, we want to be called the Swarm. We want to be called Knee Deep in the Head. Push them together. That solves the problem. 3 members also in that band. There's other bands like Haymaker. Ruination is a great one just because I love the Chicago connection there. Ebro from Charles Bronson, MK Ultra, Los Crudos was in this band. Also with Mike from Fucked Up, which I also learned that Chris Callahan from Cursed was in a version of Fucked Up before it actually became Fucked Up, which was really rad. But essentially, the initial lineup of this band, Chris Callahan, you have Rodwan on bass. You also have Mike, and I apologize, I'm going to avoid pronouncing these names because I really do not know how to pronounce them. And yeah, Mike, who's on drums, and then Christian McMaster on guitar. And so you basically have Chris and Rodwan in Montreal. You have Mike and Christian in Hamilton and the Toronto area, basically. And so I think the Swarm, aka Knee Deep in the Head, which featured Chris, Christian, and Mike, that band had essentially broke up in 2000. Chris moves to Montreal, where Rodwan is. They're working at a record store together. And I think I even read Chris Callahan was saying that he was attempting to take a break or even just like leave music in general. And that lasted about like 6 months to a year. He was already working on this. So they were split up for a little bit. I think Christian and Mike were going to Montreal to like make this work. But yeah, that you essentially have like our first initial lineup of the band, formed from the ashes of several bands, like spawning back since like high school.
I read the like website that's like a biography to Funerary or whatever.
Yeah.
That Christian left that band in a bad incident.
Yes. Which will come back up later, just because there are some more connections to maybe some of the label stuff here too. But yeah, that was a very specific personal story that like was just on the internet that you can just read. You can just a lot of like weird hardcore beef in Southern Ontario, apparently.
Yeah, it was also wild to me that there were three different websites dedicated to like biographies of these hardcore, like Canadian hardcore bands from the late 90s.
Yeah, very short-lived bands that just like, wow, we got like a whole dossier on this thing. Like that's like never happened before for this show.
Somebody's paying like fucking $4 a year to keep those domains. So just for these biographies to live.
Somebody has to know about it. And even in the late 90s and early 2000s, they're like, I mean, someone will want this information at some point, you know? They didn't know what the internet was going to turn into. They're like, oh, nothing can be found in just a moment's notice just by speaking into your phone going, find this. And
they did it for us.
They did it. They did it for buttheads like us, for sure.
Thanks, Canada.
Oh, Canada.
So they have a demo. It's a self-titled demo, which I don't believe was like really released to the public. I think I read somewhere, maybe on Discogs, that there was like maybe 20 of these made on like CDR. And do you have an image of it? It's got Vincent Price's face on it, which like lots of horror aspects. We'll get into that probably when we talk about the cover art for this album, but they recorded this in a jam space. I think Radwan like recorded them just playing, but yeah, this was like 20 of them made, very limited release. Maybe they passed them out at shows, maybe. But this would not receive somebody like with the label Night Trap Recordings actually put this tape out, put the demo on tape like in 2013. They had like a limited cassette tape release where I don't know if they, I guess, got the rights to it. Somehow they got the CDR or something and then just put it on tape and sold it. And it uses some more kind of horror imagery, which is really cool. But they do the demo. I think at some point after this, Radwan, he's Lebanese. He moves back to Lebanon for some family reasons. And then Chris moves to the Toronto area, back to that area. And then their friend Tom Pirano, who again is in a bunch of different bands like Left Behind, 78 Days Later, which I think Christian filled in on guitar for a little bit. He was in Funerary as well with Christian, and then Greyline, but he basically joins on bass. And so now you have the lineup for the first record, 1, or Roman numeral 1.
Also a great album.
It is great. It's fantastic. Like it's like released maybe a couple years before in 2003. It's super fucking raw and fun. Like that opening with all the samples and shit like that is like,
yeah,
so cool. I slept to it many nights during the week. Just like Dylan, like when he sleeps to
sleeping to
Slipknot,
that Slipknot record. Hey man, it's that was always thrown at me as a kid. Oh, this record puts me to sleep. It's like, oh, you can fall asleep to rad shit, like because it kind of it gets into your brain. At least to me, like it filters into your brain a little bit more. And we'll be digging into an album a little bit later this year. That I have slept and listened to a lot during periods of my life that I can't wait to talk about either. But that's funny to like think that, oh, hardcore band, you know, heavy metal record, listening to those as we fall asleep, and that shit just gets ingrained in you, you know, and you don't even realize it. You're like, why do I know this part so well? It's like, fuck, I listened to that thing, you know, for 9 months straight while going to bed.
Yeah. I think the thing I like about this record or the thing that was like kind of interesting to go from a demo to a debut right on Death Wish was like very funny.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, how the fuck did that happen? And then it turned out they'd been like in each other's circles, like Converge circles for years, like so many years. I think Chris Callahan had mentioned that he knew Nate Newton. I think the Swarm and Nate's band Jesuit had played together before. Cursed members knew Jacob Bannon and Kurt through like he was talking about like a punk house that people lived at, and they somehow knew each other through that. Like the Northeast is weird as hell, I guess, but yeah, you just like know, hey, we have mutual friends at this like punk house in Canada that we're just like hanging out at. They also Converge was also coming up a lot during the early days, like Petitioning the Sky era, apparently as well. So there was that connection. The first weekend shows of Cursed, based off of some of the interviews that I kind of digested here, were with Converge and Death Threat. So they were also playing their first shows with Converge. And they also knew Trey McCarthy as well from Death Wish for a while. And then just kind of wrap it up here with the Death Wish connections. Jacob Bannon also did the artwork and layout for One. So there you have it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
I think they ended up so to the album we are going to be talking about came out on Goodfellas Records, but I think like that label folded, and for a long time there was like some rights questions going around. It couldn't be repressed because like labels were playing grab ass with each other or whatever.
What are you, my dad?
No.
Eventually it got repressed it ended up on Death Wish. Like Jake put it out again.
Yeah, I was like kind of looking to see if I could pick it up somewhere. The ones, it's all sold out on their website, but they show it and it's like got different album artwork, I think. But you could still buy like a bunch of merch through Death Wish Inc. as well. They got some rad shirts. Like
Death Wish is kind of like Relapse. Like they'll just put out, hey, here's a bunch of like shit that we're associated with. They're like bands we really like. Let's put them out. Or, we've grown up listening to, and so on and so forth. Cause like you can buy some of the Orchid merch through Death Wish, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this record, because I remember it's been a handful of years ago, but we were talking about it. It's like, I wonder if I can find that fucking record. Just randomly. Like you can't. Like you can find CD copies here or there, but why get that?
There's I think I saw there's like they did an 8-track release called An Introduction to, like a kid's introduction or something to Cursed. And it's just, I think everything they did on 8-track cassette. Like it's so weird. Like, but they did it. It's like, who has an 8-track player? Like
I've never listened to an 8-track, so I don't know what they sound like, but I can only imagine it sounds horrible.
Yeah, who knows?
They didn't last long. Can't rewind them. I think that was one of the things about them.
Fuck, you just listen to them. What, you listen to them, flip them, and then you have to like flip it over again kind of thing?
I don't know.
I
would hope it would just make it. Everyone who recorded that era should like do it like Rain and Blood, where you just, it plays through the one song. It plays the whole album plays through the first side, and then you just flip it over and you can get it again.
Yeah,
it's great. One thing that Chris had said about this record was maybe they weren't like super happy with the final product. There's a quote that said there was some mastering trouble with the last one. Just little things that kind of undercut it a little bit. And then he kind of talks about how the production for 2 was like maybe the first thing that they were like truly happy, like on all fronts with. So once this comes out, Rodwan returns to Canada. Instead of going back on bass, because Tom's on bass now, they get a second guitar player and now become like a 5-piece, which for a long time, I think a lot of people who had seen this band like were pretty familiar with them as like a full-fledged 5-piece, which definitely adds to 2. Like it's a great guitar record.
Thick. It's got a dense guitar sound to it.
They had the hot take at the time for guitarists that they wanted to use two tube amps.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris does not like Durex or Triple X at all.
I do.
Yeah, use your fucking mosh metal head. It's like, huh? All right, that's cool. Like you don't have to like them, but they're still good fucking amps. So.
But it does sound like that sort of thing. Like it definitely has like some of those like older doom stoner vibes where they had like an old Sun amp that was like sitting in a pawn shop
think it
forever.
is.
Yeah,
it's probably a Sun Beta or something like that,
right?
Which are, I think, there are certain Sun heads that are solid state, and that's the funny thing to think about, because some of the stuff I found was like, oh, the weird thing about them is they use bass heads, right? That's why the guitars sound so thick, or that's why they're really large sounding. It sounds good. It just sounds like some sort of overdrive or distortion thrown into that, Sun head and just dimed a little bit. Sounds good. It sounds like a Les Paul plugged straight into like a loud fucking amp. Upon my ear, like it sounds like some weird stoner rock band.
Yeah, it's got a lot of weird elements because it's like, it definitely feels like a hardcore band, but it also has the kind of classic Sabbathy sounding riffs. There's also some blackened elements as well, some of those chords in there. And also just kind of rock and roll stuff, like genuinely, like there's definitely just some very catchy, hooky parts, like that are, so
there's stuff on here that I thought was like, oh, that's a Matt Pike riff. I just immediately heard it, was like, there's no way that these guys didn't have like The Art of Self-Defense maybe playing in the van. It just seems that vibe, like a couple of the riffs on the record really, the guitar tone has very much that sound. Like you look at the most recent High on Fire record, and there's a couple songs on here I was like, oh, I'm expecting to hear that Matt Pike vocal kick in.
Yeah, get some nice conspiracy theory lyrics about lizard people or whatever.
Hey man, it could be on here.
I'm glad it's not.
I don't know what the fuck he's saying. It's hardcore. They're just screaming the entire time. Give me the riffs.
Yeah, there's plenty of them. That's for sure.
Oh yes, there are.
So yeah, a little bit. Sophomore record released on January 25th of 2005. It was released on Goodfellow Records, like Swindle mentioned, which is a now defunct hardcore label or DIY label out of Hamilton. This was the first home of Every Time I Die. They released the EP, The Burial Plot Bidding War, from 1999.
Terrible. That thing is so bad. It's definitely a band's first release, and it's funny to think that it's the same label, because this album we're talking about is so much better than that. And that band had even gone on to say, like, yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Just like Slipknot.
Oof. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Retcon it.
Yeah, it's gone. Mike and Sully were friends.
Yes. Damn. Deep cut joke. This label was owned and operated by Chris Logan, who is another fixture of the Ontario hardcore scene. He had operated two labels previously. I'd read Structure Records in the early 90s, Sun Blister in the mid 90s. He was formerly in a band called Chokehold, which did a split with some of these guys' previous band, Left for Dead. He was also in 78 Days with Tom. He was also in Funerary with Christian and Tom, which, as we kind of mentioned earlier, Christian parted ways with the band in a very unfortunate way. There's a story about a show. I won't get too much in with it, but they definitely had to reckon.
Switchblade was involved.
There was a switchblade. Tires popped. People getting slapped on stage. A whole thing.
It's like a gangrene moment. Like, we didn't get paid. Let's go to that guy's house and rob all this shit.
It was wild. It's a wild story.
That was supposed to be their first show?
Yeah,
or,
I think so. Something
and
about
they didn't get to play it because they had to leave.
Well, it was just to touch on it. Christian's band, other band, Haymaker, who weren't on the show, were there, and there was like some weird beef between bands in Ontario, apparently. they were fucking with people on the show. I think they were more of like a death metal band because some of the liner note or some of the thing I read in that thing, they
Death
spray
to
painted
false
on
metal
someone.
or-
Yeah, exactly, on someone's van. And then Christian, it's wild. Like Christian, who is in that band, was playing with Funerary that night. So it's like, hey, here the guy who's fucking around is playing the show. He taped a switchblade to his guitar or something, and it took out a light. And then I think everyone else in the band was like, I'm done. Like, we're not playing this show. And so he quits. It's, and so now you have to basically reconcile with your former bandmate and now label owner and operator, which, they at least they released the remainder of their stuff through, I believe. So
To Be Young.
Chris also worked for a little bit of a bigger independent label known as Sonic Onion, which released music by like Voivod, Intronaut. There was also Shallow, North Dakota, which featured a Future Curse member by the name of Dan Dunham, and many, many more. So like Goodfellow basically had
Jeff's brother.
a national distribution deal with Sonic Onion because of that connection.
What, Dylan?
He said that guy's last name was Dunham. I said Jeff's brother.
No.
Moving ahead. So, the production of this record. This was recorded at Chemical Sound in Toronto with Ian Blurton, member of Come On, which I believe I read Chris had like drove and roadied for that band, so he knew Ian previously. He also recorded a band called Sinclair that Mike, the drummer of Cursed, was in as well. I love this quote. He's our Billy Gibbons. He gets what we're doing, and he knew how to get it in analog. We wanted to record it as much in analog as we could without digital stuff. He just knew everything. It's a lot more organic, and you can really feel it. So that was it.
Give me another take.
That's another hot take at the time is do all this album on like tape, real life tape, no digital stuff, like that Foo Fighters album.
Oh, Wasting Light, great record.
Yeah, well, it sounds, again, there is that warmth, I guess, that kind of classic warmth for sure. But I'm sure it was fucking difficult as hell. Like,
Screaming
I don't
at
know
each other about missing a take.
And some of the way that Christian plays too, I'm like, damn, if I had to try to like get that in a single take, that ain't happening. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work for me, Pop.
I want to mention something about the production real quick, but kind of before we go too far into this. I read some things about how like a lot of people thought it was overproduced. Some people thought it was underproduced.
They didn't know
like,
what the
fuck does that mean? You're just looking for a reason to bitch. And you're talking there's three of us here that will find a reason to bitch. The one thing I could say is that the drums weren't crazy loud. They're kind of subtle. Like the kick and everything's not very loud in the mix, but you've got this huge guitar sound. And like the bass is really loud and it fills out this great bottom. That would be the only complaint, is that the drums aren't crazy loud, but it also feels like they just set some mics up in a room and we're like, play. Whatever we pick up is what's going to come on.
There's a few parts I thought that, like, there's one part in particular, like one song where like the drum feels like a fucking lightning bolt striking or whatever. But we can get into that. Like, I got some notes on it for sure. But
there was an interview Chris did where he specifically pointed out like that the drums weren't as loud in the mix as they maybe could be. But he was like, you just got to play it on your speakers and turn it up real loud.
Yeah, I read the same one.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's like get in the car, crank it up, listen to it kind of thing. Like, it's there, it's just not crazy loud, but it doesn't affect me of listening to the fucking record. It's not like the Slipknot record where the drum tone is like really hard to hear, right?
We just got over that. I don't want to think about it anymore.
So
it can't hurt me.
And that record sold millions of copies. So you listen to a record like this where like a bunch of like, underground fans are going, it's overproduced, it's underproduced. Like, God, just listen to the fucking record.
Take a walk.
touch some grass.
Yeah. The artwork, pretty cool. Pretty great
It
art.
is
We
nice.
kind of talked about it before. Chris did the design and layout for this. The He Goat, the classic He Goat, which was taken from, I believe, a movie we watched during our Halloween marathon that we do every year. The Devil Rides Out from 1968. I can't remember what year it was, but I definitely remember watching it. So maybe either I watched it by myself or we watched it together. But
we have watched too many.
Yes.
I would have to check my Letterboxd account to see if I've seen it or not.
maybe we'll
But
throw a
it's a
trailer
Hammer
up.
movie.
Yeah, maybe we'll throw the trailer up right here. Da-da-da.
My God, the goat of Mendes, the devil himself.
Christopher Lee as de Richelieu, who knows he must fight the devil's power to the death.
My God.
Wow, wasn't that great? Wasn't it amazing? Yeah, Hammer movie stars Hammer regular Christopher Lee.
Right.
You got Charles Gray, Nike, I don't know, Leon
Nike.
Green. It says Nike Erigi. Eric, I
Mhm.
don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. If you're still living, if you're still kicking, I'm sorry. Which it's funny because this, like, the goat, the image of the goat is like only in the movie for like 5 seconds, but
course.
it's perfect. It's a perfect image. And I even saw a video of Chris. It's like maybe a few minutes. He worked at I don't know if this was before Cursed, probably during, definitely after maybe, but Chris worked at a video store in Toronto called Suspect Video and Culture, and they just kind of peruse like all around the store. And yeah, the dude is definitely a film buff. I've heard him like, or read him like name drop movies like Paris, Texas, in like some interviews and stuff. I'm like, oh, this guy fucks with movies. That's pretty cool. But and all their merch and stuff is like all taken from film, and maybe even some of the sampling. I remember seeing like on the Death Wish site, there's like an Omen shirt. Like I said before, Vincent Price. So it's definitely all there.
In one of the interviews for 3, I think, one of the guys was like, yeah, Chris did the like cuts for the samples in the beginning of the record, but we can't talk about what those are.
I tried to figure out, I was trying to like search up the phrases, couldn't find them.
Yeah.
Another great artwork though. But that time I think John Baisley. Yeah. Baisley artwork.
Yeah, that's it's funny to have like Jake Bannon do your first one, Baisley do your last one, and then you've got this your iconic one is the one that's not really associated with like these two great artists, right? So this artwork I had seen prior to this album because I'm pretty certain that Electric Wizard has used this same image on some of their artwork throughout the years. Big horror buffs, big Hammer horror buffs. But it also makes me think of there's a video for Danzig's Am I Demon, where it kind of pops up and there's this goat character that pops up and it's just there for a little bit. And it's like, oh, okay, this is very kind of on par with that whole horror tie-in.
I think it's even, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure, like, just because if I remember the video right, like Number of the Beast has like a bunch of clips for Iron Maiden, obviously,
That may be
but that has like a bunch of old horror movies, and this one definitely, I think, is in that video as well.
Yeah.
But
so it's one of those pieces of art that you look at and you go, I've seen this before, but I don't know where, I don't remember where I saw it. It's like, okay, this is, I got to dig into this.
it's my favorite of the 3, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool.
One cool thing about Cursed album artwork is all like thematically very similar, like black album covers with either like white or kind of like gray tones on the art part.
Yeah. What's another band? It's like a band that does that pretty good. Like keeps it consistent like that. Like Thou, maybe? I don't know.
Like yeah, for the shit they put online,
Right.
not on like their yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of bands that do that, and it's I like when bands thematically kind of stick with a very similar artwork. It's really nice. Like you could look at the more kind of like, abstract looking pieces of art. Like obviously this isn't anything in the same vein, but You look at all the Cannibal artwork. It's the same artist for 30 plus years, right? So there's a consistency. There's still a thematic kind of style. And knowing that Chris is really into like horror films, even though you've got Jake and John doing the artwork for the first and third record, like it still kind of all ties in. It still has this look, this kind of aura to it. You brought up, Thou and their artwork. We talked about Chris being a movie buff. It made me think of Brian with all of those photos and shit that he's just got sitting somewhere of like, I can use this at some point.
Yep.
It just makes me think of that. And like Chris has this like, memory bank of, I can use this quote, this piece of artwork, because even if you look at some of his current projects or prior projects, I'm sure that still comes in, because you look at some of the Sect album artwork and it's black and white. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty abrasive looking artwork at certain points. It's got a tie in with maybe some of the early Crust, album artworks or anything like that. So it's still very much like the band is represented by what's on the album. If you want something colorful, listen to that. Whereas this is what you get.
I think Bucket Full of Teeth, that 3 of the 4 of their records, if you like put them together, it like makes a
that's
piece
cool.
of art.
That's
it's
awesome.
Like a continuation of a bigger piece or something.
Hell yeah. All right, let's get into the record a little bit here.
We start off the record with a little 2-parter, kind of like War Pigs. You got intro and Fatalist, 2 songs smushed together as one.
It's great. It's fantastic. A classic tracks.
It reminds me of Jane Doe with the 1-2 punch of the opening tracks of that, right?
Porcupine,
like it's
Fault Fracture.
Yep. They could have been one track, but they split them up. And the way they play them live, it's obviously just in succession because they're such quick tracks. It strikes me funny too when listening to this, because it is 2 tracks in one. So you go, why is this track so long? And you're like, if it had been intro, like, okay, got it. So it's a cool track. The video's pretty wild too, like all the night vision, like up close shots of the band.
Oh yeah. I think Fatalist is just 1 minute and 10 seconds long.
Yeah. It's just boom.
I love it. Yeah. That like feedback intro, but then it literally builds until it just can't anymore. It couldn't possibly build any further, but it does,
it starts out with that fucking snare roll.
Yep.
And like Chris on this track has a lot of distortion on his vocals, at least to my ear. I heard it. It's very, very early, like Jake Bannon, just sounds like an animal. They're like very abrasive sounding. And for that to be only a minute long track, it's just like, sure, this is what we're expecting. And you kind of get hit with a record that's got different styles to it a little bit, like different songs and everything like that. So you're not just getting all of the same thing, which is really cool.
No, I mean, this like literally goes from a kind of more of a rock kind of rhythmic thing in the intro. And then when it just kind of cuts, it goes like right into like hardcore, like punk, like in your face for, a minute and a half or whatever. Yeah. Very great start to a record. And like, I think throughout the years after you showed me it, I often associate the album with this track and a few others on here, but like, it's just such a great opening part of the record.
Yeah. In that intro after the build, when everybody gets into the part, that is like classic headbanging shit.
Mm-hmm.
I just want like feel like I'm at a fucking 80s rock and roll show, like concert or something.
All the spandex, lights,
yeah,
the whole nine.
And they're fucking there's one of them in Fatalist, but they're like one string riffs all over this fucking record.
Definitely. Just hammer-ons and pull-offs, like it's
fucking bends,
bouncy as hell. Oh, lots of bends, yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna say this right out the gate. And I don't know how you guys might take this, but I'm saying it. We mentioned the Goodfellow tie-in with like Every Time I Die, right? There's a lot of aspects to this record that if it were released 6-7 years later, they would have been on those big Every Time I Die tours. There's a lot of this that sounds like that kind of mid to later era of that band, maybe less of like the boogie stuff that they did early on. And when they got more into like the old school metal, the kind of like different riffs of that style, like, oh yeah, this would have fit right in. I mean, there's even some things like you listen to later with like a band like Black Breath, you know, how popular they were for that period of time. Like if this band had came out, if this album had been released 5 to 7 years later, who fucking knows?
They did well though. They went out, they fucking played 200 shows off the back of this record. So I think like they certainly had a ceiling based on the type of music they played, but I think they did well for like how fucking abrasive this album is.
I will say too, to kind of go off maybe both of your points here, where they played a lot of shows. I think people like certainly in underground circles knew who they were, but it like maybe based off of some interviews I read where they couldn't quite find, they were maybe jarring to some people, like they would be on like metalcore shows of the era or whatever, and that people would be like, what is this? But then they'd be like, oh, we played with like bands like Drop Dead and like Nasm or something like that. And then fans are like, what? Like, why is this? But it makes sense for both of them because they know where their influences come from. They know that like they come from that like that hardcore background or something like that. But maybe for people that were going to either show, maybe they couldn't quite understand or get it, I guess. I don't know.
It was still different in like 03, 05. Yeah. Like it was still different in that time. I mean, these guys would have fit right on a bill with like Trap Them. Absolutely. Like they would have fit right in on that fucking bill. I mean, two extremely aggressive sounding bands, maybe Trap Them's a little bit more in like the grind realm in different parts. But like these guys have aspects of grind to them, like even on this record. I mean, it's wild to think of like, yeah, we played 200 shows, but we had this problem of fitting in, and we would always end up on like a weird metal bill or a weird hardcore bill that no one would like really tie into us. I mean, there's a live show where Chris is in a chair and they're getting ready to play Model Home Invasion, and he's like thanking the bands on the bill, and it's Cancer Bats and Goat Whore on the bill. So it's like, what a fucking weird world, right? And
I think Cancer Bats also kind of, they sound like a lot of like this sort of thing, like, you know, kind of that bendy, groovy,
it's got that southern
sludgy
kind of thing to it. Yeah.
This just, us talking about this reminded me on Ampere's like Bandcamp, their background for their Bandcamp is show flyers, and one of them is with Cursed.
Damn, there you go. I'm sure all these I'm sure they played shows with Every Time I Die and like bands like Ampere, and obviously they did, but
the Northeast is weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it was much easier to get, you know, across the border at this time too. So maybe you could hop over and, you know, because like I think Toronto's like right next to Niagara Falls, and you know, I'm sure some of those bands like what is it? Where's Syracuse at? I don't know my geography, but like
I think it's like around your butt.
Oh, there it is. Great. Awesome.
Reparations.
I think these two tracks together, or three tracks, however you want to put it, are the sequencing of that is great. I think the way it shifts from this first track into like these, you know, black metal chords, these very like eerie, moody chords. Perfect. It creates such a vibe. So that it just shows kind of what we were talking about earlier with there isn't one particular style. It's just kind of all there.
It fits though. It doesn't feel like anything's, you know, like a weird, like there's not a Faith No More, like here's this weird circus music, right? It's not this weird shoehorned thing in just to be weird for weird's sake. These guys are blending whatever they're listening to and whatever their influence is in pretty well. It's meshed in. The songwriting's pretty solid too on this record, and just hearing that kind of go through with these first three tracks, it sequences really well, and it feels like it flows perfectly.
Yeah, it'll like, because even in like this song in particular, where it has like that black metal kind of part, it'll like a lot of times on this record, it'll transition like on a dime, just like very like fluidly like into something completely different. Like on this song, it goes into like a more traditional metal kind of sludgy riff.
Yep.
That we're talking about with
one string riff.
Right.
Yeah.
All those. Yeah.
I love that when they go to that part, the riff,
Mm-hmm.
that is like the rest of the song. They just play that riff for the rest of the song.
Yep.
There's really only 2 fucking parts on this whole song, and it's like, I don't know, 3-4 minutes long.
Yep.
It's not especially short, but there's only two parts.
Yep. R.I.P. R.I.P. We just killed Club. All right. Sorry. Anyway. R.I.P. starts out with the stepping stone effect. They got the, like in a Minor Threat stepping stone, it like starts out with that, like it sounds like it's recorded in the other room, and then it just is in your face. This is much shorter than that, but that was my first thought when I heard it.
That's true. That's true. The drum part is not a D beat drum part, but when I think of that rhythm, the riff to this song is what I think of. Like the da 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 da. Like I just think D beat. Like that is my first thought.
They got a lot of like weird, like meandering kind of parts. Like it's just where are we going with this? This is wild.
Yeah.
It's kind of got everything. I mean, it's like the sludgy parts. It's got more of like a traditional rock part, but maybe more of a standout track for me. I mean, I think the first part of the record is like, I mean, there isn't really a bad song on this record for me personally, but I think the first half of this record is like so strong, and especially this next track is like maybe my favorite song on the record. Head of the Baptist,
dude,
classic.
Such a great groove, twin guitars that are playing the same kind of riff but like slightly off with each other. So
yeah, I listened to that song, the Motorhead version, and I was like, I don't
Dylan in the chat sent the Motorhead track, the title track.
The opening riff sounds like, to me, Orgasmatron. Sepultura does a great cover, I think, on the Arise album. It's like a B-side. And it sounds like that. It's got that same kind of like stomping groove to it. Just makes me think of that immediately as soon as I hear it. And I can't not hear it. It's like, because that riff is the song, right? Like that riff is the entirety of the song. It's a great track. I hear it as soon as it kicks in. It's like, all right, this is fucking cool.
That riff, when I listened back, I kind of got what you were saying. Yep. It's like the same kind of like
this swings differently though.
Yeah. And I mean, there are also like different variations on the riff in the song as well. I mean, to me, the chorus is really everything about this song, but it's only played the one time. Like it's once and then it's fucking done. We're out of here. But the riff is so catchy. The lyrics are so memorable. I think also the thing that kind of stuck out to me too, to maybe even push that theme of a rock and roll record, the bass is doing that kind of like, I don't know if you'd call it like a 16th note thing, but almost like think of like Jerry Lee Lewis when he's hitting the one note of the piano, the bass is kind of just doing that over and over, kind of creating a drone. Yes, 100%. Yeah. They got the rock and roll. These guys are like Sun Records or something. I don't know. It's just, it's all there.
That riff at the very beginning, just the guitars playing that riff for like, seems like a long time. And then the drummer just slams on that fucking fill to bring the whole fucking band in. And that fill is like just pure power. It's like adrenaline shoots into my veins just from those drum hits. And then like the song smashes all the way in.
Yeah. Everyone on this record really is just so great. It has like their standout moments. Like I feel like I can hear the bass pretty well throughout this whole record.
It's mixed pretty damn well.
Yeah. I mean, Chris's vocals are insane. And then, of course, like the riffs, like part of me, like when I hear this record, it gets me so like pumped up, but then I'm like, man, why didn't I ever write riffs like this? Why can't I write? Please.
I thought the riff, so there's like in Head of the Baptist, there is a like hardcore drum part. It's like boota, pata, 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 pata. The guitarists are playing like weird, like really restrained playing. They're not like just fucking 16th or 32nd notes playing super fucking fast. They're like playing a really weird restrained riff for that like drum beat that every hardcore band since Minor Threat has used.
Different strokes for different folks kind of thing, right? You know, maybe it is more of the vibe of this track's a little more groovy in like a weird way. And the guitars are just like, you know what? Let's let the drum kind of do that thing, but let's kind of hold this back a little bit so it adds, that drum part sticks out a little bit more. You know, a lot of this stuff I'm sure was written in the practice space of just like, fuck, let's just play what feels right, you know, kind of thing, instead of, you know, setting down going, you play this part here while we play this because it'll increase the impact of this. It was probably very off the cuff and just a group of guys that had been around each other and played as many shows as they did. But it is cool to see different mindsets of what it would be like to like write, because if there's a drummer playing something like that, I'm obviously going to try to match that tempo and play some wild shit over the top of that. Whereas these guys are like, lay it back, let the riff kind of do what it's doing, or let the groove do what it's doing. That's almost a very like sludge thing, right? Just lay back, just lay it in thick kind of thing. Head of the Baptist. When I first saw this song title, when we were really digging into review this, first thing that came to mind was None So Vile, the album cover. John the Baptist, head on the plate. Like immediately I went, fucking perfect. Canadian tie-in too.
The next track, The Void. What's so great about this record, I feel like, is that it is very rhythmic. It is very primal sounding. Like Dylan mentioned with the previous track being like kind of sounding like a Motorhead homage. This track right out of the gate sounded like a motorcycle revving up, and it kind of reminded me of Symptom of the Universe by Sabbath. It just kind of has that same kind of driving, almost like engine sounding, chugging riff. Very Iommi, and even the drum parts seem very Bill Ward-esque with some of the fills that Mike is doing as well.
The bass is really moving the beginning of the song along.
So this is the track that's got the weird like it's almost not even a riff. It's just like scraping against the strings in a very rhythmic way, right? The bass is actually playing a bass line over the top of that, and like is cutting in the mix, but he's only doing it at certain parts, and like he'll lay back a little bit. Yeah, that's really fucking cool.
And when it does, it's got like a snarl to it. That bass, like, oh man, it's awesome. It sounds great.
And that when they get past this is another moment where like when they get past the build at the beginning of the song, it's just like more fucking classic headbanging part. And then they like, there's like another weird like one string guitar riff, and I can't tell if that riff never comes back again. Like they literally play it for 2 seconds. Yeah. Or if it is also the chorus of the song.
Ooh, that's a good question. And maybe we're talking about the same thing. There's a riff around the 124 mark that like kind of creates some like, it creates some really good tension. Like this, there's a lot of really great like chord choices on this record, or like the way they play that. Just like there's such a unique way of like writing these songs, and like this one in particular I noted was like, damn, who thinks to fucking do that? I don't know. So
I think we had notes from interviews, and Chris was saying that a lot of the lyrics thematically of this album were about like, I guess maybe his time in Toronto. It was about like living in a city. When I read that, this was the song that The Void was the song that like I really thought of, because like the lyrics of this song are kind of about like a guy being found dead, presumably after like some days being passed away. So this was the song that stuck out in my head for that like theme. That I don't know if all the songs on the album share that theme, but this certainly is one.
Yeah.
So I've been watching this series to like fall asleep at night, and it's called The Body in the Basement, and it's all of these different true crime stories about finding bodies in basements. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I've been watching that going,
They really
fuck.
nailed it with that title. Damn.
Like, I mean, yeah, but it was like, this track, okay, the track makes sense to like tie it in with that because I've like watched that after listening to this album too. Just like, all right, I'm done listening to this for the night. Let's put this fucking show on. So that's fucking cool.
All right, getting into our instrumental, the titled track, like a minute and 20 seconds. You basically just have like moody, clean guitar and piano.
I'm for it.
Definitely. Oh, I love this. It breaks up the record very nicely. And then this is like a track I would almost, if you like Tribulation could write a track like this almost for sure.
Yep.
Just the way those chords arrangements sound.
You know what? It's funny to think about, but if you look at like the Down Below era of that band, and I mean, fuck, if this band was releasing an album like this now, these two bands could probably do some shows together. Like that era of the band.
A lot of those, I mean, think of like In Solitude, that Sister era. I think there's some of the similarities depending on what you're looking for. But I think this is a great like halfway point to the record for sure.
Your first moment to catch your breath.
Yep. Yeah, really. And then it doesn't last very long.
And then your last moment to catch your breath.
Old money. We really just kind of right out of the gate go back into the chaos for sure.
There are so many songs, like The Void starts with like a little guitar part like chugging in, and like Head of the Baptist starts with just that guitar riff. This song, everything comes in at the is great tracking for the album, to have that like soft guitar chords and piano playing from the instrumental, and then just like everything smacks you in the fucking face immediately.
This is there's a certain dissonant thing about this track that it does where it has those kind of arpeggiated dissonant notes that are played. That when I made the Every Time I Die comparison, that's what I hear. Obviously bands have done that throughout the years. You know, Converge has done it. That whole era of like metalcore has done it. But Every Time I Die in like the Big Dirty era, the New Junk Aesthetic era, like that was their thing. And it's like, fuck, that comes right off the page. But I've also seen like photos of Andy Williams in a Cursed shirt or with a Cursed sticker, a Cursed 2 sticker on a Les Paul. It's like, oh yeah, it's fucking there. I'm sure, you know, there's some incestuous stuff going on there with that. And like, this is a really rad track. Just roll with it. It's fine.
Dylan's always talking about incest.
It's a really rad fucking track. And
what a weird guy.
I really like the B-side of this record a lot.
Yeah.
Some great songs. One of my favorite, the next one, the opening riff, again, just some weird, very wild, like out there choices that are so like unique to this band. Clock In, Punched Out opens with like almost like a bluesy lick, like a Southern twang kind of bend. That's like,
there it is.
What are we like, guys? You had me with some of the black metal chords. You had me with the sludgy parts, and then you're like just bending that note, man. Yeah, something out of New Orleans.
It's fucking fast too.
Yeah.
The opening of Clocked In and Punched Out is ripping fucking fast.
There are some odes, I think, and maybe some nods to classic punk bands on this record, and I'll bring one up as we get to the closing of the album. But this one in particular, the title is like, oh fuck, it's Clocked In. It's the Black Flag track. This is Henry, and Henry's gonna sing this song. Like, it's just fucking great. You gotta have a song about fucking hating work, and this has to be the song. Like, god damn, like work fucking sucks. It makes me go back to listening to Remission for the first time, and there's a song on there called Workhorse, and it's just about how much work fucking sucks. And like, this is that track. And it may have a different, lyrical concept and content to it, but like I interpret it as, oh, work fucking sucks.
I love that. Yeah, we get like a really short track with like a minute 30, and then we get to the longest track on the album, like damn near 7 minutes, Model Home Invasion, which just opens up with a single kind of ominous doom riff.
God damn, what a track.
So good. This is a really, really solid solid track. I think the drums are like at its obviously punchiest here because like literally that snare hit, it sounds like a bolt of lightning just hitting the ground every time Mike just kind of cracks at it.
Anytime I have listened to this track within the last couple of weeks, I've had to stop whatever else I was doing and just focus on this fucking track. Because it's like, okay, these guys were definitely, there was some Sabbath listening going on. There were doom bands being listened to. There's almost points on here I'm like, kind of has a pentagram vibe to it.
See, I wrote down just because of I wrote down two things. One, the amount of space that it creates. It reminds me of like Hand of Doom era, or a Hand of Doom Sabbath song. But also, this song could have been written by like a doom band out of like the Pacific Northwest, something like Yob or Hell or whatever. Like it's all there.
They really do the most that you could possibly do with the absolute least in this song because like there's only like 3 parts of the song and one of them at the end is just like one note.
Yeah.
Like technically it's 2 notes because it's like a hammer-on riff, but for all intents and purposes, it's one fucking note, and that's the riff.
This track brings back hearing. Oh, it's the Steve Von Till track on Converge's Axe to Fall, Cruel Bloom. The whole back half of that song is just shit like this, and it's like, it's guttural feeling. You can feel it you can feel it in like your rib cage. You can feel it fucking everywhere.
In your plums.
Feel it in my plums. Let the boy watch.
We get sorry, go ahead.
Fuck, it's a heavy fucking track. And for an album that's only 34 minutes long to have the odd like 7-minute track, it doesn't feel like you're just going, fuck, it's another long track. It's like, oh, that was only 7 minutes? Okay.
How about the whisper part? Chris's like whisper part over the palm.
I want to hear what you guys have to say.
I like it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Huh. So we just did a Slipknot episode.
It's different.
Where we were talking about a track that had kind of a whisper vocal to it. No, can't like that one.
No. Well, I think Chris is not literally singing about being someone's stalker while he's whispering the part.
Hey man.
Well, I mean,
helps it.
It's called Model Home Invasion, so it's probably not equally great.
But it is funny to think that, we all have kind of differing opinions on different records, and we hear things differently. And I heard this today, like prior to recording. I was like, fuck, I can't wait to get to that part.
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk about that. Because we hear it and we hear things that are different that reach out to us, and things make more sense to us in different aspects. Whereas like I heard this, I was like, that's fucking cool. It's a cool choice that I'm glad he made, and he did that. And he's kind of an intense character. He's an intense person. So like to have these intense subject lines and have these intense lyrical concepts, it's like, okay, this makes complete, total fucking sense to do a part like that. And I also understand where, in 2024 time, looking at a song that was recorded 20 years ago, I'd be virtually the same thing on a Slipknot record, and seeing like, okay, that's a really uncomfortable subject matter to talk about. And the way it is approached, it's so well done that it does sound like, oh, okay, let's get past that a little bit. But it fits the fucking song. I'm glad that we've got like some Yin Yang Twins influence on this album.
Wait till you see my
Wow.
Let me whisper in here.
Talking about the record and just like how everything fits so well, I think the sequencing again works from Model Home Invasion into Hell Comes Home, because it feels like they would have just played these songs together live.
Yep.
Like when it ends, and then Mike does like the 4 like hit, like hi-hat hit, and then just explodes into the song. Yeah, it just felt like, I would have seen these songs played together live 100%.
And also just the change of pace from fucking this song is also blisteringly fucking fast after Model Home Invasion.
Yeah, and it's also like a lot of this record too is very, it's not just heavy, but it's also very melodic. And so I feel like this song, especially while they are like going a million miles a minute and Christian is like flipping all of these chords, yet it somehow remains very melodic too. Like, I don't know how they're good. This is a good band. The band is good.
There's two parts of this song that I really like, and aside from really enjoying the song, but the two parts that stand out to be the most are kind of the tail end. There's a point where there's a slight pause, and then it comes back again, and it ends the fucking song. That I think is fucking great. But the ending of the song, because prior to that pause, Chris is screaming, "Hell comes home, hell comes home." It pauses, then he comes back. I don't necessarily know what he's saying during that part, but it is literally, it's the tail end of Rise Above. It's it's the stanza of Rise Above. We gotta rise above. We gotta rise above. We gotta rise above. It's that, and I go, there's no way that wasn't just a nod, right? You know, these guys grew up listening to hardcore. It's fucking there. You know, we've all heard that record, and it's whether by choice or not, or just a nod. Like it hit. I went, yeah, it's an intense fucking song. So why not, you know, pay homage to an intense fucking song?
I really loved the vocal line of this song. That's it's business as usual. It's business as usual. It's business as usual. Like your business as usual. It's killing us all. I really fucking love that.
You know, it's very much like, and I think you posted something about it today, the Sex song, 6 Black Lines.
Yeah.
Is that right? Like, that's very,
right.
It's there. Like, it ties in. It's kind of a, you know, Chris is still full of vitriol and aggression and anger, and it's still there, like, God, 20 years later.
I could see someone making the argument that it could end here, but I'm that
guy.
Okay. See, I love the outro. I think the outro is great. It's longer than some of the songs on the record that are, you know, which is pretty funny. But I think kind of, again, a Sabbathy thing where it's like, you know, self-titled Black Sabbath song that opens the first record, starts with rain, opposite, it ends with rain. It ends with like this just very ambient kind of rain. There's some like birds, I think, as well, that are kind of mixed in there. And then you also get very briefly too some string arrangements on the track, and then it just kind of it ends. It's very cinematic to tie it all together. But I like it. I think it's great.
I think I would like this as the intro as opposed to what the intro was. I would almost prefer it because it sets a weird tone to me to have like a really aggressive track come after something like this and end on a note that leaves people gasping, especially like a hardcore record like this. That's just like, bah, here it is. Because as the outro with the rain and like, you know, the Black Sabbath nod, because there's a lot of that on here, and that could have been what it was. I heard it and went, is this Misery Cantina from Sing the Sorrow? Like the opening, like with the rain and all of that. I went, okay, I mean, that's cool. It's not like they definitely weren't pulling from that. But that's kind of how I heard it. And especially after Hell Comes Home, when I heard the kind of breathless ending to that, I went, yeah, that's how you end the fucking record. Like, but again, I wasn't in the band. It wasn't my choice. The band made it. It's a great record. It doesn't deter me from listening to the fucking record because I'll do it. But I will say the last couple listens to this album, I skipped this.
I don't ever really like care when bands put some like
coalesce.
Yeah, put like something at an outro or something at the end or the beginning of the album that I just inevitably end up skipping. I'm just like, they fucking made the art, so they deserve to get to make the decision on whether this went in or not. Like,
yeah,
at the Red Album by Baroness, I always skip like all the swells for the first minute and a half of the beginning of the album. I just completely skip it every time I start that album. But like, it's not my fucking decision just because I personally skip it.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, fuck both of you guys.
If a band puts something in their album that I essentially like don't care about, like, I don't. Good. Good for you. Good for you for deciding to do that.
Yeah.
Because fuck me. That's what.
Well, yeah, 34 minutes, 19 seconds. I think we all agree that it's a fantastic record.
It's a rad record. Yep.
The band was pretty happy with it. I think this was like maybe the first moment where they were like truly satisfied with the record. We kind of mentioned earlier that some people had some very interesting takes on the production, which it's like we don't know what to think about this record actually. Like, all right, dumbass, like whatever.
What? Also, I just want to who listens to hardcore music? Who that listens to hardcore music listened to this album and was like, that's underproduced. Like this sounds like shit. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Have you never listened to punk before? Like, what? Never heard of it.
You Austin, you will probably have to cut this. But
Great.
hey man, not everybody can stand to listen to anything further more aggressive than like Epitaph Records like a catalog during this period of fucking time. Like there were so many of those fucking Warped Tour bands that were just going like, oh yeah, we're hyper aggressive. And it's the most sterile fucking thing that was ever released. There's no hair to it. There's no rawness. No one had a fucking zit in a fucking promo photo. It was all airbrushed out. Everybody looked too like perfect. And then like something as ugly as this comes on, they're like, huh, it's underproduced. It sounds fucking fine.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It sounds great.
Out of all of the records, I think this is like my favorite production wise. But I will say three sounds a lot different, but I think just they nailed it with this. Like I thought it was fantastic.
You look at all three of us, right? All three of us come from kind of differing musical backgrounds, right? Swindle's got both feet firmly planted in punk rock. Austin, you started with like classic rock bands and thrash metal bands. I came from like kind of modern metal and underground stuff and classic rock from my dad. And like we all have listened to records that had terrible productions and loved those fucking records and liked the bands and the songs. And it didn't bother us one bit. And even now, we listen to shit that may not have great production, and we go, I still fucking love this. Like, the songs are there, the riffs are there. Yeah, you have to dig a little bit through the murk to get to it, and it's like, it's fucking rad. And yeah, we have a forum here where we talk about production and like what it kind of makes us feel and everything, but to say that this album has a poor production, get a fucking life.
If you can hear every instrument, then
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
thanks,
yes.
Ian.
Oh, yeah. The kick drum might be a little subtle a couple times on here to my ears, but like to Austin's take, sounds fine. Like he loves it. He thinks it comes out like a fucking gunshot blast. Like, sounds great. You know, we on the Slipknot episode, those drums sound terrible. I still love that fucking record, and the drums kind of fit the tonality of the record a little bit. But again, like, God damn. You're just looking for a reason to hate a record.
All that, we have the record, it comes out. However, before this record was released, two members of this band leave for varying reasons, some of which I actually have no idea. But Radwan, he was an engineer for several years up to this point. He actually left Curse to open a recording studio in Montreal in 2004. He established the Hotel Tatango recording studio with members of Godspeed You Black Emperor and the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra, as well as an ex-member of Arcade Fire. So
wild shit.
Yeah, pretty weird connection that it's just like, hey, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Arcade Fire, one step away from Cursed, apparently. Tom, who played bass on this record, was actually replaced by Dan Dunham.
Jeff's brother.
Yep. On bass and late.
That is a fact.
100% fact. Take it seriously. Don't look it up. Dan stepped in.
Tell your friends also.
Yes, tell everyone
when
you
you
know.
talk to your friends about Cursed. Tell your friends that Jeff Dunham's brother is in the band.
Swindle said
it. Dan Dunham fills it. I was just waiting for anybody to step in again. Fills in on the bass role in late 2004. I couldn't find why Tom was replaced. Don't know. Doesn't matter really. Dan was a member of Shallow, North Dakota, which I believe I mentioned earlier because Goodfellow Records put out records by North Dakota, Charlotte, North Dakota. He was also credited as a sound assistant engineer on the first record, One, in 2003. So they become a 4-piece and remained that way basically throughout the rest of their history, right? Touring for this record, I found some West Coast dates. I found some Canadian dates. I think Chris mentioned they played a week with Dysphere and Rotten Sound in Scandinavia for a week in like 2005.
Like we mentioned earlier about playing with weird bands and like that. Dysphere is the perfect band for this band to have toured with. Rotten Sound is like, Swindle and I have talked about Rotten Sound in the past. Like they're a rad fucking grind band, and their Relapse releases were tight.
Yeah.
Like great grind band. But Dysphere, like Thomas Lindbergh on vocals from At the Gates fame, like perfect fucking band for this band to tour with.
They toured hard. One of the quotes that Chris said was, "We've never really done anything in such an organized way before. Putting out a record and immediately touring like crazy for about a year. We've played almost 200 shows." They played the hell out of it. And one of my favorite quotes that I found as well, I think Chris was referring to maybe a separate project, maybe like Ruination or one of the older bands where he talked about playing like, 60 shows or something, like just they were out on the road forever. And he was like, yeah, like I think I just took it from the Black Flag thing where like maybe a few of the shows were really great, but you spend all your time out on the road, and if you don't hate it, you're not doing it right or something like that.
Punk rock, baby.
Hell yeah, dude.
Get in the van, motherfucker.
Oh God, miserable.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Cursed has a tie-in that is long running on the show with Baroness, High on Fire, Mastodon, Ampere.
Oh,
Alan
Douche.
Yeah.
I think somebody corrected us in the.
Fuck it, I'm saying it how I want.
Yeah. Blackout at Sunrise, the EP that came out after 2, was mastered by Alan Duchess.
Douche.
Who knows?
Yeah, we gotta
literally
get him, dude.
Who could possibly know that?
We
There's no
should
way
get Alan on the
knows.
show. This show is like, at this point, it's led us to this one moment to get Alan. We talk about him like every episode. It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
So did the EP, did 3. Alan's the man. We love Alan. The 3 gets recorded in January of 2008. It gets released on Goodfellow Records on March 22nd of 2008. I think in May is pretty much when the big thing happens where they're on a European tour in 2008, and it's like May, and it's like they're in Germany. It's towards the end of the tour, and they get robbed. Unfortunately, like all their money, their gear, passports, like funding for the tour is stolen. I don't know, like they say that the door was locked from the inside. I don't really know what happened. All I know is that this was like kind of the last straw, I guess. From what I read, from what Chris has said, this was like kind of one night over a series of many. This band seemed to be like constantly frustrated with each other. Like, I think the quote I saw was that from the outside, it's looking like it's going up, but from the inside, maybe morale was going down. And they were playing like on stage, and he'd mentioned like, we're like almost like playing at each other. Like, we're so frustrated with each other. We're like almost like just, I'm playing at you. I'm so upset. So this was just kind of it. Like, they get robbed. It's done. I think they get back to the States. I'd read some articles where the community as a whole, their scene had like attempted to rally around them they did like a benefit show. Goodfellow Records set up like PayPal donations, but it was just done. And the quote that kind of sums this up perfectly was from Chris. I don't exactly remember what this article was from, but he said, "I think punk bands aren't meant to live forever. Any one theme group of people, you have to be ready to let something go no matter how much of yourself you've poured into it to keep it intact, especially if it has a political or lifestyle theme. You can't speak for anyone but yourself, and when you try to, you can't do it for very long without getting too dogmatically fixed on the idea of your own credibility. So you let it go and start again and again and again." So
it's better to burn out than to fade away.
Yeah. And they definitely kept going, or at least like, a lot of these members like continued to do stuff. Some of them didn't, but Chris was in bands like Burning Love, Oxygen Tank, Mature Situation, Sect. Radwan still does like Jerusalem in My Heart. Dan, I believe, maybe still does Shallow North Dakota. There's a couple other ones, but they continued to be creative, or at least some of them after this. But as far as Curse was concerned, this was it. It was done, and they're not getting back together. That much is clear.
Yeah, nope,
it's not happening.
Like one of the interviews that Chris did after the Swarm got back together, they did like some reunion shows. This is kind of like the quote you just read of Chris.
Was it Swarmed or is it Left 4 Dead?
Maybe it was Left 4 Dead. He was like, yeah, the lyrics of that band like definitely lean in a way politically that not everyone in the band even agrees with anymore. So like, I don't think we could really like stand to be around. Like, they don't want to play those songs anymore. Which is kind of like his quote about Curse breaking up. Like, if there's a definite political statement, and they don't see that way anymore, or like you've moved on to a different place in life, maybe it's not good to still be playing that same stuff. But getting robbed of all your shit in a foreign, like a completely different continent that you live in, is fucking wild and traumatic, and good for them for continuing to play music, because I think I would not go on tour ever again if that fucking happened to me.
Right. Like, I couldn't imagine, like, no passport. How am I getting home? Like, what's it? Right. This is fucking, I mean, I know it's, there are cell phones by this point, but like, it's still difficult. Like, you still got to go through a lot of different hoops to try to figure it out. And
in the 100 Words or Less podcast with Chris, Chris didn't have a fucking cell phone.
Oh yeah, good point.
At the beginning, at the intro, he was like, yeah, I had to set up where we were supposed to meet each other on a phone call because I couldn't text Chris. So like in 2008, he probably didn't have a fucking cell phone.
That hurts. That hurts a lot to think about.
I mean, that was fuck. These dudes were roughing it. I mean, 2008 it's not terribly far from where we sit now, but technologically, it's still pretty dense back there. I mean,
I think that's around the time I got my first phone, and maybe a couple years before, and it was like you put like a couple bucks on it I had to pay to text at that time. You know what I mean? Like,
it was 10 cents a letter, I think.
Yeah.
This is gonna
I'm serious. Yeah.
Exactly date this time the first iPhone came out in 2008.
Damn.
There you go.
There you are.
There you go. So
I remember seeing that for the first time. Thinking, oh.
Yep. Well, I've already got an iPod. Why do I need that?
Yeah. Right.
Because my first cell phone, I think I was 14, because I was the junior high basketball manager, and I got to go to a lot of the away games.
You did. You were the junior high. This is a whole other thing.
Anyway,
our new podcast.
I was the junior high basketball manager, so my first cell phone I got at 13 or 14, and it was a Nokia. I mean, the pull out antenna, like Snake, and like that was my first cell phone. And yeah, it was like, this was prior to texting becoming a thing, really. So during this era, it's not wild to think that some dude in a hardcore band's like, I can't afford a fucking cell phone.
Yeah.
Or
just didn't, or even maybe just didn't want one.
I'm fucking washing dishes at, when I'm off tour at a Steak and Shake or something like that. Like, this is just what I have.
That was my first job, Steak and Shake. Anyway,
that's what I made the reference.
Thanks, buddy. All this to say, band's done. There were projects that came after it. While it was like very short-lived, I think we got some great records out of it. I still enjoy these records a lot, especially this one. So thanks, Swindle. Appreciate you, buddy.
And thank you, Cursed.
All right, we've reached that point of the episode where we like to talk about things we've been listening to, some recommendations for you. We were talking about Curse, so I'm going to talk about Sect. Dylan mentioned them a few times earlier. They did just release a new album, Plagues Upon Plagues. This is their fourth studio album. It's their first in 5 years. The pandemic definitely put kind of a halt on a lot of bands, and this one was no different. This is their third for Southern Lord Records as well, but it features Chris Callahan from Cursed. It also features Andy Hurley from Fall Out Boy and Race Trader. Check out that new Race Trader record. That was also great. Jimmy Chang from Undying, Scott Krause from Earth Crisis, and Steve Hart for Mania for Conquest. Talking about Converge a little bit. This was also recorded at God City by Kurt Ballou. But if you like Cursed, you'll definitely like this record for sure. It has a lot of the same kind of vibe and feel. It's got some fucking riffs on it. Some of my favorite, hashtag Forever Home, Lovers of Life. But then you got like really melodic parts too, like on Zerzan Wept is a great track as well. I think maybe this is haven't done like a ton of deep dive on like Chris's like back catalog from different bands, but I feel like comparing it to the Curse stuff to this, I think he sounds like he has a lot more range on records like this for sure. But if you like dissonant, sludgy, even bleak and intense lyricism, you'll certainly like this record.
Honestly, this record there's a chance that this ends up on my like top 10 at the end of the year when we come back and do that show.
Shit.
It's a heavy fucking record.
Finding this record is my favorite part of doing this episode. And there in one of the interviews, Chris says like about this record, because the interview was from like, I don't know, last year or 2 years ago. He was like, the thing that he likes about hardcore is emotional honesty. But at this point, if you are emotionally honest with yourself, you can't make an angry record. You can only make a sad record. And this fucking record is just lyrically is fucking devastating. Like, I think a lot of the lyrics are about like as a planet, our response to like COVID, like a literal plague, like how we just decided like, we don't actually care about saving people. We just want to do the shit we've always done. Like collectively as a whole entire goddamn planet, we decided that. And a lot of the records is about Chris's disappointment at that. The first song is devastating, and that Lovers of Life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Politically, lyrically, that song is fucking bleak.
I pulled off the side of the highway today listening to that, just like, all right, let's finish this, then move.
Yeah. What a record.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, I think. But
I did.
Yeah,
I did enjoy it.
Yes. What have you been listening to?
I'm gonna recommend Chris's other project, Unwell. Is spelled with 2 V's. I think when he started playing, he started on drums, but he never learned like guitar or bass or anything. But during the pandemic, he started to play guitar. And the Unwell project is just him doing everything, like him playing guitar and singing, and if there is bass, like playing bass. Right at this point, there's only 4 songs on the Bandcamp. There's like 2 from 2022 and 2 from 2023. One of them is a Gordon Lightfoot cover.
So I have been listening to the most recent single from Mother of Graves, a melodic death doom band. Their new stuff kind of sounds like if Michael never left Catatonia and went to Opeth and became the vocalist in there. It's really heavy. It's got these great kind of death growls. Makes me think of like the Peaceville 3 a little bit. It's fucking rad. I was a fan of their most recent release, which the name is slipping me, so I do apologize. But the track is called Upon Burdened Hands. It's going to be on an album called hopefully I can pronounce this, The Periapt of Absence, out through Profound Lore on October 18th. This shit is cool as hell.
Tight. Well, thanks, guys. This was a fun record to chat about. I've been looking forward to it for a while now, and I'm so glad that Swindle picked it, and it was a lot of fun to deep dive. So we'll be back next week with something else, but you can always follow us at Riff Worship Pod at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have playlists that are available in the description below. Hits from the Crypt, riffs on repeat. They are updated oh so frequently. Dylan also does reviews from the Dillbozer's Den, just contemporary records, some stuff that's coming out now that you can check out that we are definitely fans of as well. We also have an email you can send to riffworshippod@gmail.com. Reach out to us. Want to ask us questions, maybe suggest a record, or just say, hey, you can reach out to us through that. But for myself, for Swindle, for Dylan, this has been a conversation on Cursed. You're listening to Riff Worship. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.